All right, Xolani, today some of the focus being on the numbers in terms of government spending where higher education is concerned. Let's begin with the Hehe Commission, which investigated the possibility of fees must fall protests and remind us again of what their findings were in relation to free higher education.
Good evening, Kathy. Well, it was quite clear from the Hehe Commission, despite hearing from National Treasury and many other submissions, that free higher education was impossible for South Africa at that particular stage. The Hehe Commission came out clearly saying that it is indeed possible, and in fact we must increase our spending on free higher education to about 1% of the GDP of this particular country. And as you can see there, that is all of the particular spending on education. 6.5% of our GDP. Actually, it seems to be the same with the likes of those who are in BRICS. When it comes to Russia, 4.7%, Brazil, 6.3%, and you look at India as well, 3.8%. And some of these countries have made strides in making sure that when it comes to free higher education, they are actually investing in their youngsters. When it comes to South Africa, as you can see in that graph, it's quite clear that since those particular protests 5 years ago, there has been a steady increase right up until 2019. When you look at how high the increases have been in each and every year when it comes to what the government has tried to do. Whether we have reached the 1%, these numbers actually tell us that indeed South Africa has actually reached 1% of South Africa's GDP when it comes to spending on higher education. Just looking at starting off in that year 2018, we see that that was 89.9 billion rands that was set aside for higher education, with different segments getting that much. When it comes to NSFAS, that was 22.8 billion rands, and we look on 2019, it also went up tremendously to 108.3 billion rands, and the NSFAS getting 33.3 billion rands. And looking at 2020 as well, it was another huge increase there, 116.9 billion rands, another increase for NSFAS, and so on. When it comes to this particular year, there has been just a small decrease, a cut, as we have been seeing from the effect of COVID-19. So definitely coming from 2015 to date, government has spent more. But we said, let's just not stop there with the numbers when it comes to what the World Bank has had to say about South Africa's spend. But let's talk to someone who is now involved in higher education. Asizwe Nxasana is an entrepreneur, a businessman, and the founder of Future Nation Schools. And he believes that now is not the time. We are not in a space as South Africa to actually impose a free higher education. This is what he had to say to us.
In the short term, it would not be feasible, not in a country that is experiencing fiscal constraints that we are facing at the moment. Because if you look at the budget of the Department of Higher Education and Training and Science and Innovation as an example, that budget has increased quite a lot over the last couple of years, especially from 2018 when fee-free education or subsidized education was introduced in the country. But we've seen what's happened. There have been budget cuts across the board in government departments. So it is not fiscally possible in the short term. But certain adjustments and reprioritization needs to happen, especially around how we can grow our economy. Because if this economy grows and we can deal with the issue of unemployment, we can deal with the issue of how we're growing the size of the cake of our economy, then it becomes possible to start funding some of the programs, including funding students in higher education institutions.
All right, Xolani, let's move on now to company news. Retail giant Shoprite seeing a rise in half-year earnings. I guess no surprises there. They've been just on the up.
Absolutely, Kathy. Not only have they actually eaten up the market share of the likes of, Pick n Pay and Woolworths over the past year, they've also added 4,300 new jobs because of the demand during COVID-19 and the lockdown. Even with COVID-19, load shedding and low consumer confidence levels over 2020, Shoprite's adjusted headline earnings per share grew 17.1%, with sales increasing 4%. 7% to 83.4 billion rands. The group, which operates more than 2,300 stores across the African continent, declared an interim dividend of 191 cents. Shoprite also says further growth was kept as a result of the ban on alcohol sales in July, while sales at its loss-making operations in the rest of Africa declined by 8.4% in rand terms. We spoke to Petri Rendelinghuys about why, at this present moment, did Shoprite do so well when it comes to their competitors.
Shoprite actually performed well. I mean, as you can imagine, the alcohol sales didn't do so well. So what is their brand called? Anyway, alcohol sales was down something like 21%. So I guess no surprise there. But everywhere else, sort of total group merchandise sales rose some 4.7%. Shoprite and Checkers Hyper, or Shoprite Checkers and the Checkers Hyper brands grew by over 11%. Overall revenue was up something like 3.2% to 83 billion. So it was really, really good. Earnings per share also up around 20%. So actually really managing to grab a little bit of market share. There were some inflationary pressures, but, nothing too major. I think one of the major things that stood out for me is they've managed to decrease debt as well. So their borrowings declined 5.9 billion to 5.5. So in other words, they halved the amount of debt that they carry.
After another tough trading day, let's take a look at how the JSE performed at the end of trading. That's it from Business at Prime this evening. Back to you, Kathy.